Welcome to Valid History. Here, old photos tell real stories from the past. Please subscribe, like, and share to help keep history alive. In December 2003, during Operation Red Dawn, Samir, a 34-year-old Iraqi-American military interpreter, helped locate Saddam Hussein and pull him from his hideaway, playing a direct role in one of the most significant captures of the Iraq War. For decades, psychic Sylvia Brown earned millions making claims about missing children, including a 1999 case where she said a 6-year-old was enslaved in Japan, and a 2004 statement wrongly telling Amanda Berry's mother her daughter was dead. In April 1945 in Poland, German concentration camp commandant Adolf Wilhelms was forced to hold a sign admitting, "I was the executioner of Poles at Byers in 1939, shortly before his execution at the end of World War II. In 1966, during the Vietnam War, pilot Victor Vizcarra parachuted after ejecting from his damaged F-105 fighter bomber, watching as the burning aircraft passed beneath him and crashed into a mountain after being struck in combat. This image reflects the fate of a 22-year-old Nazi who rose from Hitler Youth ranks and terrorized an estimated 30,000 women before ultimately facing execution, a grim example of how power and ideology shaped lives during Nazi rule. In 2003, photographer Han Chengli captured a portrait of 5-year-old Butadma, likely of Mongol ethnicity in China's Inner Mongolia region, an image later exhibited widely and featured on the June 2005 cover of Women of China. Taken in 1915, this candid photograph shows Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna of Russia playfully fooling around while her sister, Grand Duchess Olga Nikolaevna, lies sick in bed nearby, revealing a rare, informal moment inside the Romanov family. In 1945, a Japanese-American family returned from wartime internment camps only to discover their home vandalized with racial slurs, a stark reminder of the hostility many families still faced even after their forced confinement ended. Authorities say Miami mother Jasmine Paez attempted to hire a killer through the parody website rentahitman.com, allegedly submitting a photo and address of her 3-year-old son while requesting the job be completed within a week. During the Vietnam War, U.S. Marine sniper Chuck Mohini recorded the highest number of confirmed kills in Marine Corps history, including 16 headshots in 30 seconds. Yet, after retiring, he quietly worked for the U.S. Forest Service. Known as the Silent Twins, June and Jennifer Gibbons spoke only to each other in a private language for nearly 30 years, until Jennifer's sudden death in 1993, after which June began speaking freely for the first time. At a massive festival advertised as the event of the century, organizers ordered only about 2,500 portable toilets, and when they overflowed into nearby fields, crowds mistakenly played in what they believed was mud, but was actually human waste. In 1956, a worker carefully paints the towering structure of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, part of the constant maintenance required to preserve one of America's most recognizable engineering landmarks. On February 23, 1945, U.S. Marines raised the American flag atop Mount Suribachi during the Battle of Iwo Jima, a moment captured by photographer Joe Rosenthal that became one of the most iconic images of World War II. Photographed in 1897, this rare image shows Queen Victoria smiling, challenging her reputation as a stern and humorless monarch, and revealing a glimpse of the personal warmth many of those close to her described. In 1938, a young Frank Sinatra captured a mirror selfie, offering a glimpse of the future music legend before worldwide fame transformed him into one of the most recognizable voices in 20th century entertainment. Inside a California saloon in 1889, patrons gather in a typical late 19th century setting where drinking, conversation, and gambling shaped everyday social life across the rapidly growing American West. In Missoula, Montana, during 1910, an unusual sight appears as an elk is saddled and ridden through town, reflecting a rare and curious moment in local history captured in an early 20th century photograph. Taken on January 19, 1909, Lewis Wicks Hine photographed young textile mill workers at Bib Mill No. 1 in Macon, Georgia, documenting child labor conditions that later fueled growing calls for labor reform. In 1992, actor Keanu Reeves appears in a promotional photo shoot for the film Dracula, representing a moment during the publicity campaign for the Gothic adaptation directed by Francis Ford Coppola. At the liberation of Dachau concentration camp in 1945, an emaciated 18-year-old Russian girl looks directly into the camera, her appearance revealing the devastating human toll of Nazi imprisonment during World War II. In 1972, 2 Cub Scouts concentrate on shining shoes, participating in a small community activity that reflects the everyday responsibilities and fundraising traditions often associated with youth scouting programs. In Texas in 1951, a man celebrates the long-awaited end of a drought, capturing a moment of relief and joy after months of dry conditions that had deeply affected farms, communities, and livelihoods across the region. On November 9, 1985, at the White House, Princess Diana danced with actor John Travolta during a state dinner, creating one of the most memorable and widely photographed moments of her visits to the United States. Introduced in 1961, these unusual power roller skates demonstrate an inventive attempt to motorize personal transportation, reflecting the experimental spirit surrounding new technologies and futuristic ideas during the early 1960s. In old Japan, coolies carry a geisha inside a keigo, a traditional wooden passenger basket used as a mountain taxi, illustrating how people once traveled through difficult terrain before modern transportation developed. Captured by Claude P. Detloff in New Westminster, Canada on October 1, 1940, the famous photograph, "Wait for Me, Daddy," shows a small boy reaching for his marching father during a World War II troop deployment. During the 1930s, beauty competitions sometimes focused on individual features, including contests judging only the eyes, reflecting the era's fascination with appearance and unusual promotional events. Photographed in 1929, Grand Central Terminal appears illuminated by sunlight streaming through its windows, a view no longer possible today because surrounding skyscrapers now block the same path of light. In 1920, a golf ball collector gathers lost balls from a course, performing a simple but necessary task that kept golf courses functioning during the early decades of the sport's growing popularity. In 1964, the Beatles meet boxing champion Muhammad Ali, capturing a lively moment when 2 of the most influential forces in music and sports crossed paths during the height of their global fame. In 1916, ethnomusicologist Francis Densmore records Blackfoot Chief Mountain Chief onto a phonograph for the Bureau of American Ethnology, preserving indigenous music and spoken traditions through early sound recording technology. In 1956, artist Pablo Picasso and actress Brigitte Bardot appear together in a photograph that brings together 2 globally recognized cultural figures from the worlds of modern art and cinema. On the Normandy coast during D-Day in 1944, a captured German soldier sits calmly drinking coffee, an unexpectedly quiet moment in the aftermath of one of World War II's most intense military operations. Graduation ceremonies in the late 1890s were major public events where students, families, and communities gathered formally to celebrate academic achievement at a time when completing education was still a rare accomplishment. In Copenhagen during the 1910s, a father and son ride together on a specially designed bicycle, demonstrating early creative adaptations that allowed families to travel together through the growing urban streets of Europe. Captured in 1949, a young girl splashes and plays in the water, reflecting a simple moment of childhood joy during the years following the end of World War II. In 1869, workers carefully pruned trees in Prospect Park in Brooklyn, New York, illustrating the early maintenance and landscaping efforts that helped shape one of the city's most beloved public green spaces. In 1914, a tourist pauses with his automobile at the very edge of the Grand Canyon in Arizona, showing how early travelers explored America's natural wonders during the first decades of widespread car travel. This photograph from 1980 shows Yuri Valentinovich Knorozov, the Soviet ethnographer credited with deciphering the Mayan writing system, a breakthrough that allowed scholars to finally read many ancient Maya inscriptions. Before radar technology existed, large acoustic listening devices were used to detect approaching enemy aircraft, allowing soldiers to hear distant engines and prepare defenses during the early years of aerial warfare. When this giant sequoia was cut down in the 1890s, it was estimated to be more than 2,600 years old, meaning the tree had begun growing centuries before the rise of many ancient civilizations. In 1877, a photograph documents a family living a nomadic life in London, revealing a rarely recorded glimpse of people surviving on the margins of a rapidly expanding Victorian city. Separated by 66 years, these two photographs highlight the passage of time, illustrating how people, places, or generations can change dramatically while still maintaining visible connections across decades. In Paris in 1961, an elegantly dressed little girl dances with remarkable grace, capturing a joyful moment that reflects both childhood innocence and the city's enduring reputation for style and culture. In 1916, during World War I, a soldier rides horseback carrying a lance while wearing a gas mask, symbolizing the strange overlap of traditional cavalry warfare and the terrifying new chemical weapons of modern conflict. High above Manhattan, in 1936, a cameraman films window washers working on the Empire State Building, documenting the dangerous jobs performed during the maintenance of one of the world's tallest skyscrapers. Originally reading Hollywoodland, the famous hillside sign overlooking Los Angeles, had its final 4 letters removed in 1949, transforming a real estate advertisement into the enduring symbol of the American film industry. Taken sometime between 1900 and 1916, this photograph shows the Guffey family of Alabama, offering a quiet look into everyday life for a Southern family in the early 20th century. In the 1890s, a sailor poses beside his small companion, capturing a gentle and personal moment that contrasts with the demanding and often dangerous life associated with maritime service. In 1985, astronaut Anna Fisher appeared on the cover of Life magazine, highlighting her achievements as a NASA astronaut and representing the growing presence of women in space exploration. In Hollywood, California, during 1961, a Great Dane rides comfortably in the passenger seat of a sports car, creating a playful and memorable photograph from the city known for unusual sights. At the inaugural NBA Slam Dunk Contest in 1984, Larry Nance electrified the crowd with his athletic leaps, helping establish the competition as one of basketball's most exciting showcase events. During a wedding photograph in 1927, an unexpected pig ran directly through the scene, turning what was meant to be a formal family portrait into a humorous and unforgettable moment. Captured in the United States in 1935, a woman rides a bicycle, reflecting a time when cycling offered both practical transportation and a growing sense of independence for many women. Crowds in Philadelphia gathered in 1876 around the massive arm and torch of the Statue of Liberty, a dramatic preview of the monument still being completed, giving Americans their first close look at a symbol that would soon stand in New York Harbor. In the Baikal region in 1917, a man carries a hammer used to knock down pine cones, revealing a practical method people relied on to harvest seeds from towering trees in the forests of Siberia. High above the busy streets of New York around 1950, a construction worker calmly walks along a narrow steel girder, capturing the everyday bravery of the men who built the city's skyline far above the ground. This sturdy 1915 GMC truck reflects an era when early industrial vehicles were built with heavy materials and simple engineering, reminding viewers why people often say that trucks from the early 20th century were made exceptionally tough. At exactly 1600 on October 22, 1895 in Paris, the Granville-Paris Express failed to stop at Gare Montparnasse, smashing through the station wall in the famous Montparnasse derailment that shocked the city and quickly became a historic photograph. Frank Lentini became famous around the world as a man born with 3 legs, 4 feet, 16 toes, and 2 functioning sets of genitals, turning his rare physical condition into a public life that fascinated audiences. In Damascus in 1899, a powerful moment of human cooperation appears as Samir, a Christian dwarf who cannot walk, is carried on the back of Muhammad, a Muslim man who is blind. In 1888, the Grand Schema monks of the Balaam Monastery of the Russian Orthodox Church stand together in solemn formation, their distinctive robes representing a strict monastic order devoted to prayer and spiritual discipline. On a public beach in New York in 1938, rows of portable cabanas provided beachgoers with private changing spaces, reflecting a time when organized seaside recreation was becoming increasingly popular in American cities. In Chicago in 1922, a woman confidently rides a towering penny farthing bicycle, a design already old-fashioned by then, but still striking with its enormous front wheel and delicate balance. In London in 1929, a knocker-up performs the unusual job of waking workers by tapping on doors and windows with a long stick, a service many people relied on before alarm clocks became common. In 1945, an English boy casually sits on top of a sea mine while eating an ice cream cone, an image that startlingly mixes the innocence of childhood with the leftover weapons of a recently ended war. The original Michelin Man appeared in 1894 as a unique advertising figure made from stacked tires, introducing the world to a character that would become one of the most recognizable symbols in commercial history. In Los Angeles in 1920, a police officer demonstrates a portable holding cell, a compact cage designed to temporarily detain suspects on the street before transporting them to a police station. This haunting pile of bison skulls from the 19th century illustrates the devastating decline of the American bison population, which fell from around 30 million animals to only about 300 within roughly 50 years. Beginning in the mid-1880s, horse diving became a popular spectacle in which a horse and rider plunged together into a pool of water, sometimes leaping from platforms as high as 60 feet. In the 1910s, a baby practices walking inside a wicker support frame while the mother works nearby doing laundry, showing one of the inventive tools families used to help children learn to stand and move. In 1910, Mexican leader Porfirio Diaz stands beside the massive Aztec sunstone, a powerful symbol of ancient Mesoamerican civilization displayed during a period of national pride and historical reflection. During the winter of 1911, Niagara Falls froze into an extraordinary landscape of ice, transforming the famous waterfall into a silent frozen spectacle that attracted photographers and curious visitors. On March 5, 1953, the massive freighter Marine Angel navigated the Chicago River with only 7 inches of clearance on each side at Van Buren Street, becoming the largest ship ever to travel that narrow route. A photograph from 1908 shows Native Americans standing together, offering a glimpse of indigenous communities during a period when their cultures and daily lives were undergoing profound change across the United States. Roughly 130 years ago, 3 women proudly posed beside their bicycles, capturing the growing popularity of cycling and the independence it offered many people in the late 19th century. Taken in 1936, this image shows children with worn shoes, simple clothes, and dirt on their faces. Yet their expressions reflect the resilience and innocence that define childhood even during difficult times. Captured sometime between 1920 and 1930, this portrait presents a young woman whose simple expression and style reflect the everyday beauty and fashion of the early 20th century. About 124 years ago, 14 lumberjacks gathered together, representing the physically demanding profession of logging that supplied the enormous quantities of timber needed during rapid industrial expansion. Around the year 1900, girls play together outdoors in a simple scene of childhood activity, reflecting how young people entertained themselves long before the arrival of mobile phones and modern digital distractions. In 1839, Robert Cornelius created what is widely considered the first photographic selfie, turning his camera toward himself and capturing one of the earliest self-portraits in the history of photography. On September 2, 1882, photographers successfully captured the first known photograph of lightning, freezing a split-second natural phenomenon that had fascinated observers long before cameras existed. A scene from the 1940s shows people seated together at the dinner table, illustrating the style of shared meals and household routines that defined everyday family life during that decade. In Times Square in 1920, a New York City police officer poses while hanging from a structure high above the street, creating a striking image against one of the most recognizable intersections in the world. A sign displaying gasoline prices from 1939 reminds viewers of a time when fuel cost only a fraction of modern prices, reflecting the economic conditions of the late 1930s. In 1930, 2 boys hold a camera out toward themselves to take a photograph together, creating an early example of the same self-portrait style that would later become known as a selfie. In 1922, a daring performer hangs from the 24th floor of a Broadway hotel, demonstrating the kind of high-risk stunts that attracted crowds during the era of early 20th century daredevils. Rain falls across the streets of New York in 1914, where pedestrians, carriages, and early automobiles move through the wet cityscape in a quiet glimpse of everyday urban life. During the 1920s in New York City, a performer balances on a chimney atop a 22-story building, displaying a breathtaking act high above the streets below. In 1935, a worker stands high on the growing structure of the Golden Gate Bridge, capturing the dangerous labor required to construct one of the most famous bridges in the world. Photographed in 1910, two brothers stand together even though they had fought on opposite sides during the American Civil War, a quiet reminder of how deeply the conflict divided families. In 1918 on Wall Street, Charlie Chaplin promotes war bonds, using his worldwide fame to encourage Americans to financially support the nation during the First World War. Around 1900, near the Simeon Post Office in Cherry County, Nebraska, a homesteader family stands proudly before their sod house while the daughters wear matching dresses in a photograph taken by Solomon D. Butcher. In 1985 in Albany, New York, a young Mike Tyson stands with trainer Cus D'Amato before his professional boxing debut, the fight where Tyson defeated Hector Mercedes by first-round technical knockout. In 1903, the Wright brothers achieved the first powered flight of a heavier-than-air machine, a brief but historic moment that marked the beginning of modern aviation. Photographed in March 1972, the World Trade Center towers rise dramatically above New York City, representing the ambitious scale of modern skyscraper construction. On April 3, 1945, 16-year-old German soldier Hans-Georg Henke appears shortly after being captured by the U.S. Ninth Army, revealing the human cost of war during the final months of World War II. The Ute Pass Trail began just below the Springs of Manitou in Colorado, passing through Ute Pass and continuing toward the White River country of Utah along a historic travel route. At the 1959 American National Exhibition in Moscow, Whirlpool displayed RoboVac, a self-propelled vacuum cleaner presented as part of the futuristic Miracle Kitchen of the future. Inside the German submarine UB-110 in 1918, the cramped control room shows the complex equipment sailors used while operating underwater vessels during the First World War. In 1957, an unusual celebration appears as a hippopotamus receives a birthday cake, capturing a rare and playful moment involving one of the largest animals kept in captivity. In 1903, Alexander Graham Bell and his assistants test experimental kites made with tetrahedral panels, part of his research into structures that might help advance early flight. Before alarm clocks became widely affordable, knocker-uppers worked during the Industrial Revolution, waking workers by tapping on windows or even shooting dry peas through pea shooters. In California in 1917, more than 100 men and women stand beside a fallen giant sequoia, emphasizing the enormous scale of these legendary trees. A photograph from 1903 captures the busy daily life of New York City streets, where pedestrians, horse-drawn vehicles, and early automobiles share the crowded urban landscape. Two young newsboys from about 114 years ago stand together for the camera, representing the thousands of children who once sold newspapers on city streets to earn money. On a quiet Beverly Hills street in 1955, actor Cary Grant casually walks his Siamese cat on a leash, a surprising everyday moment that reveals how even Hollywood legends sometimes lived with charmingly unusual routines. In the 1850s, visitors standing beside the ancient Sphinx encountered a very different tourist experience than today, facing the monument in a far less developed landscape that reflected an earlier era of travel and exploration. In the 1990s, comedian Chris Farley appears in a personal moment with his father, a simple family photograph capturing the man behind the laughter before his larger-than-life comedy career became legendary. Taken in 1897, a quiet portrait known simply as The Two Sisters captures a moment of family life from the late 19th century, preserving the bond between siblings in a single still image. During the years of the Great Depression, one photograph shows a struggling family, reflecting the harsh economic reality faced by millions of ordinary people whose daily lives were shaped by unemployment, hardship, and survival. In 1942, at Mauthausen concentration camp, prisoners were forced to carry granite blocks weighing up to 110 pounds up the notorious stairs of death, where exhaustion often caused men to collapse, triggering a deadly domino fall. In 1961, during the tense early days of the Berlin Wall, residents of West Berlin lifted their children so grandparents living in East Berlin could see them, a brief and heartbreaking connection across a suddenly divided city. Photographed by Ernest Barraud in 1887, this image, titled Alice and the Dormouse, brings characters from Lewis Carroll's story into early photographic form, reflecting the Victorian fascination with literature and staged portrait photography. In 1908, San Francisco, a full Victorian house slowly moves along Steiner Street, powered entirely by horses, revealing the remarkable methods once used to relocate entire homes across growing American cities. In 1928, people head out to the unusual spectacle of goat cart races, a quirky form of entertainment that reflects the playful and inventive recreational culture of the early 20th century. In 1933, a Dutch boy prepares to skate by strapping a pillow to his backside, a clever homemade solution meant to soften the inevitable falls that came with learning to glide across frozen ice. Camping in the 1920s looked very different from today, as travelers packed their gear into early automobiles and set out into nature, blending the growing freedom of motor travel with the timeless appeal of outdoor adventure. A couple photographed in 1865 during the era of the Second French Empire stands as a quiet reminder of everyday life in 19th century France, preserved in a formal portrait from a transformative historical period. In 1887, New York City, telephone poles crowded with an extraordinary number of wires reveal the chaotic early infrastructure of communication technology during a time when telephones were rapidly spreading across urban America. Taken around 1883 in the Black Hills of South Dakota, this photograph preserves a moment from the American frontier era, documenting a landscape that was central to the region's mining history and westward expansion. In 1905, painter Claude Monet sits peacefully in his garden, a colorized photograph by Jacques-Ernest Boulhoz capturing the master of Impressionism in the natural surroundings that inspired many of his most celebrated works. In 1970, 23-year-old Gary Anderson created the now famous recycling logo for a design contest, producing a simple symbol that would later become one of the most widely recognized environmental icons in the world. In 1935, Robert Wadlow, the tallest man ever recorded, stands beside his family, a striking reminder of his extraordinary height during a life that drew worldwide attention before his death in 1940. In Idaho in 1891, workmen carefully lay a wooden water pipeline, demonstrating the labor-intensive engineering methods used to build early water systems that supported growing communities across the American West. In 1936, a migrant farm worker stands with his wife and their 10 children, a powerful image of family endurance during a difficult era when many agricultural laborers moved constantly in search of work. More than a century ago, a simple photograph of a woman captures a quiet moment of everyday life from the past, preserving the presence of an individual whose name and story have largely faded with time. On September 14, 1973, Senator John McCain meets President Richard Nixon after being released from 5.5 years as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, marking a powerful moment of return and recognition. On a sweltering July day in 1918 at Camp Dodge, 18,000 officers and soldiers formed the shape of the Statue of Liberty on parade grounds, with reports later noting that many participants fainted from the heat. On January 15, 1962, Major Eric Bonde of the Swedish United Nations contingent in the Congo is photographed after being struck by 2 bullets, capturing a stark moment from the dangerous realities of peacekeeping missions. Around 1919, silent film star Charlie Chaplin meets Helen Keller, the deafblind American author and activist, bringing together 2 remarkable figures whose lives influenced culture, literature, and social awareness across the world. On September 6, 1890, Samuel Dixon balances with a pole while crossing the Niagara Gorge using Stephen Pierce cable, carefully making his way between Ontario, Canada, and New York in a daring display of balance. Dated May 19, 1873, a handwritten letter from Mattie V. Oblinger to the Thomas family preserves a personal piece of 19th century communication, reminding us how families once stayed connected through carefully written correspondence. Around 1921 in New York City, Deputy Police Commissioner John A. Leach supervises the destruction of alcohol seized during a raid, reflecting the strict enforcement efforts that defined the Prohibition era in the United States. Around 1876 in Deadwood, South Dakota, the legendary frontier figure Calamity Jane is photographed during the turbulent days of the American West, when mining towns and outlaws shaped the region's rough reputation. 14-year-old Richard Pierce works long hours as a Western Union telegraph messenger, serving 9 months on the job and delivering messages from 7 in the morning until 6 in the evening. In 1976, U.S. President Jimmy Carter and an aide are photographed hopping a fence at LaGuardia Airport in New York City, capturing an unexpectedly informal moment during Carter's rise in national politics. In 1908, 22-year-old Victor McLaglen poses as a boxer fighting under the name Sharky McLaglen, years before he became a well-known Hollywood actor and starred in the film The Quiet Man. In 1899, inventor Nikola Tesla sits behind his powerful magnifying transmitter, an experimental device central to his research into wireless energy and electrical transmission during one of the most ambitious periods of his career. In 1950, Timothy Evans was convicted of murdering his wife and daughter and later hanged, a tragic case that became one of the most infamous miscarriages of justice in British legal history. 10-year-old Molly Schumann is left alone in a small shack caring for several babies while adults work in distant fields, with 9 people sharing the cramped one-room home. In 1903, workers raise new telephone lines in Cortland, Kansas, reflecting the rapid expansion of communication networks that were steadily connecting even the smallest American towns to the wider world. In the 1890s near Taylor Creek and Lake Okeechobee in Florida, teacher Tanty Huckabee stands beside the small palmetto-covered one-room school where she educated local children. During World War II, Technical Sergeant William E. Thomas and Private First Class Joseph Jackson prepared a special Easter eggs gift for Adolf Hitler and the German Army by writing messages on artillery shells. Around 1936 at Lake Mazenau in Ontario, Canada, guests enjoy tea service on the porch of Elbon Echo Inn, reflecting the relaxed social traditions of lakeside resorts in the early 20th century. In 1964, the The experimental picture phone offered a glimpse into how engineers imagined the future of communication, allowing people not only to talk over the telephone, but also to see each other. Captured in 1888 during construction, a rare photograph of the Eiffel Tower shows the iconic Paris landmark rising unfinished above the city, as engineers assembled what would become one of the world's most recognizable structures. In 1920, Queen Genepil, remembered as the last queen of Mongolia, is photographed during a time when the nation was undergoing dramatic political transformation. In 1981, a young Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson appears with his father, professional wrestler Rocky Johnson, capturing an early family moment before the son would eventually become a global wrestling and film superstar. In 1984, actor Leonard Nimoy is photographed traveling to Liverpool with the Bangles, an unusual meeting between the famous Star Trek star and the rising American pop band. Photographs comparing the Curacanti Needle in Colorado's Black Canyon show the dramatic rock formation as it appeared in the 1880s and again in 2023, highlighting the enduring presence of this striking natural landmark. In 1964, singer Dolly Parton stands beside Carl Dean, the man she married that same year, beginning a lifelong partnership that remained famously private despite her enormous public fame. Around 1900, Rose Perkins proudly poses with her bicycle, reflecting a time when cycling offered many women new freedom of movement and independence at the turn of the 20th century. In 1976, Russian man Nikolai Machulyak feeds a polar bear and her cubs condensed milk, capturing a rare and unusual encounter between humans and one of the Arctic's most powerful animals.